It's the Brad and John Show.
For December 23rd, this is C Block, which means we started right around 7:40. Reference for those people who are listening in the future. If you're listening live right now, you know what time it is, and you know what you're listening to. Okay, we were picking up from where we were last quarter. You want me to tell you the Chick-fil-A story last week? I think it was Thursday.
Can you tell us where you were, which location?
I don't really want to give that away because of the fact that I don't want to necessarily trash one location, because I've used this location before, and quite honestly, this is probably the third time, and the first two times were less than Chick-fil-A standards. This time was horrible.
Wow. Okay, so you clearly weren't in West County or St. Charles County, so you're probably in Mid-County or somewhere lesser. Go ahead.
I'm not going to say. Okay, I'm in the drive-thru. I pull up, and they've only got one lane open. They got the big cones, closing off the other lane. Okay, so I come to the point where there's like 4 or 5 cars ahead of me. It goes pretty quick here at Chick-fil-A. Not this day. I go up. I didn't move. Sat there for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and we didn't move. We just sat there. So the problem was, I'm going like, this sucks. And obviously by that point in time, there's 14 people behind me, and the lane to the right of me, which is like I could get back out of it, is blocked off by cones. So I get out of my car and I move one of the cones and I drive around through this lane which is not being used, and I come to the other end of that lane. There's another cone I have to move because it's coned off the entire time away. I move another cone and I'm gone. I go across the street, get something else for lunch. I don't know what happened. I mean, it was just nobody was going anywhere, and it was just sucko, and I'm going like, man, this sucks. I mean, this is not Chick-fil-A. Okay, yesterday they have this guy, and they talk about how I built this. And he talks about one of the interesting aspects of Chick-fil-A is that they give people the opportunity to be upwardly mobile in the company. And they say to them right up front, they said, look, this is not just an entry-level job. If you want this could be a career for you. And if you want to move through the Chick-fil-A system, ecosystem, whatever you want to call it, you one day could manage your own store. Now, the weird thing about this is, I don't know if you know it, but you can't buy a Chick-fil-A franchise. Do you know this deal?
Yeah, you've explained this on the air before.
Yeah, all the stores are company owned, but you can become a manager and you can get profit sharing. They claim that on a square foot basis, Chick-fil-A is the most profitable fast food franchise, bar none. They said the average Chick-fil-A, ready for this? $8 million a year. $8 million a year in gross revenue. Okay? $8 million a year. Now, the interesting thing about it is that they encourage people to look at it as a career. And I'm thinking to myself, these people at Starbucks, do they look at it as a career? Do they look at it as an art form? Oh, I'm mixing up this stuff, and I'm pouring it like this, and I'm putting in the whipped cream, and I'm using the left-hand reverse twist when I'm putting the whipped cream. Get what I'm saying? I don't think they're looking at it as...
I get what you're saying, yeah.
They're just looking at like, I'm a barista at this. Now, years ago, I did work for Church's Fried Chicken. Matter of fact, I got hired by a guy, I don't know if he's still around, Gary Johnson, really nice guy. He was a corporate guy. And what they were doing was, he decided, and I'll give you the reason he hired me, they wanted to have like a radio kind of contest for their employees. And I put together these promos, were essentially like, hey, you can win this, like a radio kind of guy. Hey, it wasn't like the fourth caller stuff like that. And he specifically told me, he says, I want you to get a real feel for what you're doing for this. And he took me to 2 different Church's Fried Chickens. 2 different Church's Fried Chickens. He wanted me to meet these managers. The one guy, I think, was 25, 26 years old, started working at Church's when he was 16. He owned that store. And the deal was, they said, if, they had it all mapped out. It was a very defined, ladder. Okay, you start here. You start working at Church's Fried Chicken, and you're just at the low end of the totem pole. But if you do this and this and this and this and this and this and this, you end up owning your own store. I want to say, this guy was very upfront with me. I want to say this is maybe 30 years ago when I went through this. The guy told me, it was, matter of fact, I can tell you exactly the store. I was up in Florissant, right there on Lindbergh, right there at the Florissant Meadow Shopping Center. I don't know if that store's still there now. I believe it still is. And he told me, I mean, the guy that was the manager, I was like, at the time, I was like 10 years older than him. I wasn't making jack. And I think he told me he was making $100,000 a year. This is 30 years ago. And
wow,
he
that's
had
good money.
He had the opportunity that and it was interesting because he says, I'm not topped out yet, because even though I have my own store, I can get more. I can have a second store and a third store and a fourth store. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I get it. I mean, and to the point where I think that when you see upward mobility, that people will stick around. And I'm gonna diss my own industry. This is why the radio business sucks, because of the fact that with your talent, there is little upward mobility for you, because of the fact that in the radio industry, the general managers are all out of the sales department. If you want to work as a jock and you want to work your way up to running that radio station, good effing luck, because of the fact that you're never going to be there, because they're never going to hire you, because the general manager almost 99.8% of the time comes out of sales. So there's no upward mobility. So why do you have people not interested in the radio business anymore? Because you read these stories all the time. iHeart just laid off a gazillion people. Odyssey's in bankruptcy. Cumulus is having problems. Beasley's having problems. Everybody's stocks in the toilet. Who wants to be in that industry? Okay, so they look at it and there's no upward mobility. Now, the crazy thing about this is I say the same thing when you see these people who work at union jobs, because to me, there is no upward mobility. I mean, you see what I'm saying with that, John?
I do see what you're saying. Let's get back to radio for a second, Brad, because how would you structure that differently?
Well, it's once again, the interesting thing for me is that Elon Musk is the poster child for this. Okay, NASA is this governmental agency that moves like a tortoise. Okay, and Elon Musk comes along and starts, what's the name of the company? What's his space company called?
Oh, Star Rocket, SpaceX.
SpaceX. Okay, he's an X guy. Everything's X. He comes along and he says, okay, cut out this level, this level, this level, this. Don't need this, don't need this, don't need this, don't need this, don't need this. Look what he did with Twitter. He comes in, he got rid of 80% of the people. John, does your Twitter account still work?
It still does. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
They're running on 20% of their original workforce. What does that tell you about how that company got? It got bloated and it got top heavy. I'm not trying to diss my competitors, but if you look at I subscribe to a publication called Inside Radio. I get an email every day. It's always about so-and-so's the new senior vice president for the regional subsection of the Middle Atlantic for iHeart. And it's got all these upper management people. There's all these layers of upper management, but yet they can't hire any jocks. They keep getting rid of their jocks and their news people and their talent on air. And it's all upper level management stuff. And the reason for that is, and once again, almost every one of those upper level management people came out of sales. And because of the fact that and the interesting part of that is, that's why the radio business sucks, because you got salespeople, and I'm not against salespeople because I'm a salesperson myself, but you got salespeople who are running stations. They don't understand what makes a radio station successful. They can tell you how it's successful by going out and selling advertising, but if you don't have ratings, you got nothing to sell, which means it's like General Motors. If they don't have guys putting cars together or trucks together out there in the Wentzville plant, they ain't selling vans. They ain't selling Colorados or Canyons, okay? Those guys got to build the trucks, and somebody else has got to sell them, okay? But yet, in the radio business, they don't quite understand that.
But so, Brad, and I'm not arguing against your point here, but doesn't this reinforce what you've said before? When most radio stations' music playlist sounds the same, and I love a phrase that you used 2 weeks ago, you used the phrase jukebox. If most music stations on the radio are just jukeboxes, then disc jockeys really aren't that important. So why don't we put more emphasis on sales, making more money? And guess what? Let's give the listeners a bland sandwich to listen to. But as long as we have sales, who cares how good the music product is?
Okay, the difference is that if you have, and there's a station, I've talked about this before, there's a station up in Alberta, Canada, Calgary, Canada, whatever it is. It's called Now 102.3. It's incredibly successful because they have extremely talented disc jockeys who communicate with the audience, and to the point where it's amazing. You can watch their studio cam when these guys are they intro a song and then they're sitting there and they're texting, and they've got a system. Matter of fact, it's actually done by a company right here in St. Louis. Nobody knows about it. It's called Commotion. They're actually in Lake St. Louis. It's an app company for radio stations, and it's extremely powerful app. And the listeners are communicating with the disc jockey, and the disc jockey comes back on the air. Hey, I just want to say shout out to Jim. Jim, appreciate your fact that you told me about that new place that opened up down the street from the radio station. I'm going to go check it out. And Mary just texted me. And Mary, you know what? I do agree with you. That place there on the corner of West 5th and Main, they need to paint the bathroom. It looks really bad inside. People identify with that. But what's happened is you've got, and this happened, decades ago with iHeart, which you called the evil empire. They got this automation system, and they figured out that they could take one guy here in St. Louis, and they could pay him 4 hours a day. He's a part-timer, and he comes in and he does 4 radio stations a day, okay? Let's say he works from noon to 4. Noon to 1, he's putting down 4 hours of voice tracks for the station he's at in St. Louis. 1 to 2, he's doing Atlanta. 2 to 3, he's doing it Birmingham. 3 to 4, he's doing Miami, okay? And it's all generic BS. Hey, here's the new one from Kid Rock. Yeah, man, Kid Rock with his machine gun blowing up that pipe, that Pepsi, or the Bud Light. Boy, that Kid Rock guy. That's all it is. It's generic BS. And it's to the point where you get no identity. Whereas if you get a station like, and the crazy thing about it is, I know the guy that runs Commotion. I talked to him just last week, and I said to him, how is Now 102.3 doing? He says, kicking butt and taking names. They are making so much money.
So let me interrupt, Brad. Why aren't more stations doing that then?
Because see, the radio business used to be run, for the most part, a lot of the if you go way back into the 50s and 60s, the radio business was run by people who were talent. Matter of fact, there's the Gordon McClendons of the world, and there's all these famous program directors who became, like guy right here. See, I got into this is how I got into a fight with J.C. Corcoran recently. There's a very talented guy by the name of Tom Langmeyer. He used to be the general manager at KMOX, and he went to WGN Chicago. And he quit the radio business and decided he's going to start this private equity company, and he's going to buy radio stations. Well, he talks about, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Our radio station is going to be great. Well, he's never bought one radio station. And that's how the whole thing started. Because now all he's doing is talking about, here, I got my farm. He lives in Michigan someplace. Or no, he lives outside of Buffalo, New York. Here's my farm. I'm putting in a new barn. And on a Facebook page, I said to him, I just put a comment. I go, Tom, you're a talented guy. Stop working on your farm, buy some radio stations, and get to work. And his response was, well, Brad, my financial advisors told me.
And then you got into it with JC.
Right.
So, Brad, if the model up there is successful, why aren't more stations doing it?
Because of the fact that it's corporate. Because of the fact that they look at this, it's all bottom line stuff. They're looking at this, they're thinking to myself, oh my God, we've got live disc jockeys on the air 24 hours a day. We can't have that. Do you know what the payroll for that is?
You can't afford that.
Right. Oh, well, that's expensive. Blah 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 blah. And I've said this before too. This is how radio people are stupid, okay? Why did Guy Phillips last so long at KSLQ and Y98? Why did Frank Opinion make a small fortune? Because Guy Phillips would go out on sales calls with the salespeople. Yeah. Same thing with Dave Glover. Dave Glover would go on sales calls. He would become, and the management look at Dave Glover. They don't look at him as an expense. They look at him as an asset. They look at him as
Yeah. So if that model in Canada, Brad, is successful, then shouldn't other companies, at least even if they're not creative, shouldn't they look at that and be like, let's copy what they're doing?
Well,
and also when your guy at Commotion says that they're kicking butt, does he mean creatively, or are they able to hire people? Or can people pay their light bill by working on the radio? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, they make a lot of money. These are well paid people.
Then why? Yeah, I just don't get. Even if you're a bland corporate hack, why don't you look at that and say, okay, we're not in Alberta, we're in Toronto. We are stealing that model. Let's do it.
John, can I be honest with you and tell you the reason for this?
Yeah.
You're not going to like it, because I'm going to sort of make fun of you again. Because all the big radio companies are publicly traded. This radio station in Alberta, Canada, is owned by an individual. And he is not afraid to hire people because, you know what? He doesn't have to report to stockholders.
He doesn't have to. But also, and let me interrupt, Brad, because I know you and I have this discussion a lot. Shareholders will understand, look, this is an 18-month investment. And we're not going to make money for 18 months because we got to buy all this technology. We got to buy these cameras. We have to pay people. But in 18 months, we should stop the bleeding. And in 24 months, we will be profitable.
I disagree with you because of the fact that they're going to say, well, because here's the thing. They're going to look at the other. They're going to say, well, let's say Bob Pittman, fell and hit his head, and he's the guy that runs iHeart, and he's going to hire good disc jockeys. He's going to run a staff of station 24 hours a day with talented people. Okay, immediately some shareholder would go, no, hold on a minute now. Cumulus isn't doing that. What are you doing?
For sure. You're right about that, Brad. You're right about that. I completely see your point. So if this model works, and if some radio stations are privately owned, why doesn't Brad Hildebrand 7.0 go to Mr. Eckelkamp 7.0 in Santa Ana, California, and say, hey, look, this model works. I need a loan, and we can do this all with $750,000. We don't even need $1 million. And in 18 months, we'll stop the bleeding, and in 2 months, we'll be profitable.
John?
And why doesn't LB Eckelkamp 7.0 in Santa Ana, California, give Brad Hildebrand 7.0 the money?
Because they look at their reports and they see that radio stations, they look at the fact that Odyssey's still in bankruptcy. They look at the fact that Cumulus came out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They look at the fact that Dumaflaci, Odyssey, what was the other one? Cumulus, iHeart came out of bankruptcy. And, oh my God, and the worst part of it is the value of a radio station is in the license, which cannot be foreclosed upon. That is the big deal right there. If you were to go out, if you were to go to a banker today and say, I want to buy that $1 million house in Ladue, and the banker says, okay, fine, and you put $500,000 on it, that banker hopes you get foreclosed on because of the fact that they're going to be able to grab that house from you and sell it for $1.2 million, and they're going to make $700,000 on the deal. But you can't do that with a radio station. That's the problem. Okay. By the way, we went this entire time, and we didn't even talk one bit about Justin Sparks, which I wanted to talk about. Maybe we'll talk about that when I get back on Thursday.
Yeah, did you see any news over the weekend about it?
I did, and it was crazy, weird stuff. Okay, little quick. I'm going to make a quick call here, and let's see if he answers the phone. I don't think he will, but I'll try it anyway. This is my son, Drew. Today is his birthday. I don't think Clarence answered the phone. We'll find out here.
Hello.
Hey, you're on the air, so no potty mouth, okay?
Okay.
I just want to tell you, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're still on for dinner tonight then?
Yes, sir.
And you're buying?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I can tell I woke you up. Go back to sleep. I love you. Bye.
Me too.
Drew, my youngest son.
Oh, that's wonderful, Brad. That's awesome.
My youngest son. I could write a book about him. He's so interesting. He's just a paradox. Him and I are oil and water when it comes to life philosophy. If he had his way, he'd have a union job. He'd be making whatever it is, sitting back, doing, he'd try to find the easiest job he could find.
A no-work job.
Right, a no-work job, working for Tony Soprano. He'd be on.
Now, is he really going to pay for Chick-fil-A tonight, Brad? That's awesome. No. Is the deal as long as you get out and move the cones, he will pay?
Yes. Okay, we do have to talk about the Justin Sparks thing. I had that in my notes, and I forgot to bring it up. I find this whole story fascinating. Do you know what I'm talking about, John?
I know exactly what you're talking about. It did not make the top 3, but I have a link to it up on my website today, Brad. And I was going to send it to you because I wanted your take on it, and I didn't send it to you, which is my responsibility. And I want to know, do you think big deal, little deal, interesting, not interesting?
Well, first off, I read the article out of what is the name of them? Is the Hometownian, or what's the name of that paper?
It's not a newspaper. It's an online website called the Heartlander.
Okay, first off, I thought the story was bizarre in the way it was represented because we'll talk about it on Thursday, but it goes through this whole thing. And by the way, it declared bankruptcy in 29. So what?
Yeah, which I thought was superfluous. Yes. I thought it didn't have anything to do with anything.
What is that about? And did he have his dog put to sleep in 2003 when the dog wasn't that sick? Or did he run into a curb? Or did he open up his door in a parking lot and ding somebody's car and not leave a note? Come on.
What I love about this story and what I love about our Thursday conversation is there's the way normal people will view it, Brad, which is you. And yes, I'm calling you normal. And then there's things that you see in this that you're like, I know what this is really about.
Okay, John, not here tomorrow. Pray for me because I'm doing my 36-hour.
Yes, I figure. Are you going to Picola?
Yeah, 1,500 miles and 36-hour routine where I literally leave tomorrow morning, drive down, have dinner with my son tomorrow night, turn around on Christmas morning, and come back, and I'm back in St. Louis by like 6 o'clock, and so I'm gone for 36 hours. Is that crazy or what?
Be super safe, Brad.
Yeah.
And I hope you have a joyous time down there.
I will tell you one thing. It's a joy to be on the highway at 5 and 6 o'clock on a Christmas morning because it's just me. There's nobody else.
Dad, it's Brad. It's just like you're test driving a Mercedes and blowing out the engine, Brad.
That one stretch of I-10 coming out of Buc-ee's, and people know what I'm talking about if you know the I-10 there in Alabama. I think I drove 20 miles and didn't see another car. How many times can you be on a major east-west interstate which runs the entire length of the United States and not see another car for 20 minutes? Okay, John, thank you very much. And you know what? You're the gift that just keeps on giving.
Oh, Brad, Merry Christmas to you.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?